Okay, I am recording now. This is the second test episode of the ZeroTakes podcast. Um, and we're still learning, getting used to some of the audio stuff and whatnot. With me, I've got two guests, one returning, one new. Soap, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Soap. I love RTS games forever and ever. I'm in a bunch of the community discords, and I'm a psychology professor in my spare time.
And D-Man? D-Mana?
Uh, Hello, I'm Deleterious Mana. Uh, I am actually pretty new to RTS. I only really got into it with ZeroSpace's Kickstarter. But I've thrown myself in head first. So,
All right, there is not a lot of ZeroSpace news going on around, so I figure we can talk a little bit about some other upcoming new RTS news happening right now. And then we could dive into kind of talking about ZeroSpace. So the first thing is Stormgate. They did their Celestial faction reveal, and they put out a roadmap for just like what they're planning for the next year. I'm assuming you guys have seen the Celestial reveal. Soap, I know maybe you played a little bit, but not much. I probably have played the most with Celestials out of the three of us.
Yeah, probably.
Well,
I haven't played any, for sure.
right. But I think you said you did see the reveal.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So I figure I'll just ask you guys, just based on what information you guys have so far, what are your thoughts on the Celestial faction?
I think they did a nice job responding to the criticism of, like, nothing you're doing is unique. You know, that a bunch of
Yeah.
people were saying basically they have, top bar and creep camps, which are increasingly working like, other games in the past, and including ZeroSpace. And then they have a faction that works a little bit like Zerg and Orcs kind of put together, and a faction that is the prototypical human standard build kind of faction. And they responded to that criticism sort of with coming out with the Celestials, which are very different. Like, they're slightly similar to Necron and Warhammer 40k. If you guys in Dawn of War 40k, excuse me, if you guys ever played that Warhammer based RTS, but otherwise they're pretty unique. And I respect that. I respect that they did like go out on a limb and do something very different. That's cool.
What about you, Deleterious Mana? Well, what are your thoughts based on what little you've seen of them?
I think the other part, I agree with everything Soap had to say. I think the Celestials are definitely the most mechanically unique of the Stormgate factions and the units we've seen so far. Obviously, there's still tier 3 units on the way, so they have a bit of room to diversify the factions as time goes on. But visually, I don't think the Celestial Armada is particularly interesting, which is a bit of a disappointment. I like the purple.
Yeah. No, I agree. Visually and then like narratively, not very interesting. They're space angels, which is kind of already what the Protoss were in StarCraft. They were kind of space angels, like this, advanced civilization, noble, honorable civilization. Yeah, so visually, there's a lot to be desired visually, but I did play quite a bit of the gameplay, and I played almost exclusively just against the AI opponent, just to get used to the mechanics. And yeah, mechanically they're very interesting. Like Soap said, Frost Giant really went on a limb in terms of the design, and I think they did some very interesting stuff. That's time will tell how balanced it is, and how easy, how well they play with the other, the other factions. The Vanguard and Infernals. But right now, I'm super excited about it. It's a really neat idea because they've got the main base, right, that can fly. They're basically their command center, and when it flies around, it has an energy field around it like a pylon. And then you can just build. You don't need workers. You can just build any buildings in any energy field at anywhere in the map. And by itself, that's not that interesting. But what's interesting to me, at least, And again, I didn't play really at all against human opponents, and certainly not at the high levels. So I don't know if this still holds true at the high level, but they've got this mechanic where you can set a production building to be your, I don't know, I forget the term they use for the mechanic, but it's like
Your primary production.
yeah, your primary production. It's like, but they have like a different word for it, like nexus, but it's not that. Um, anyway, that's really cool because basically you can set one production building, and then every production building of that type, when it produces a unit, it appears at that production building. So you can do wild stuff like what I was doing against the computer opponent, at least, or at least what I was trying. I didn't do a good job because I was like, my timings were off and the distance where I was placing stuff was off. But you can basically fly to one side of the map, drop some production structures, right? Fly to a different side of the map, drop some production structures. You can build production structures elsewhere, like near your static bases and stuff. But then what you can do is you can keep switching which production structure is your priority base, and then produce like a group of units on one side of the map, and then produce another set of units on the other side of the map, and then you can like be doing like harassment on two sides of the map just endlessly because you're constantly able to switch which are your priority structures, and then just when one control group on one side of the map is getting low, you produce your units on that side with that proxy, and then you can switch it up. And I don't know, it just stuff like that is really cool where you can use these different mechanics that they have to, I mean, a harassment obviously, but you can kind of, what they do is they change the geography of each map. And I think people in the Stormgate Discord were talking about how difficult it might be to, balance map design when you've got a faction like that. But I personally, I think it's worth it, like, because just that idea of like the whole map is basically the same. Between Infernals and Vanguard. Like the shape of the map, where's a good place to make a stand, try to get a choke, um, or whatever. But then the Celestials kind of just completely reshuffle each map and change the structure of it, and you kind of have to think about movement and space and timing very differently once the Celestials were involved. And I really love it when a game does that, when it introduces mechanics that really kind of make you rethink and recontextualize how the game is played.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, since they can just fly their building right over everything and set production kind of wherever, it changes the nature of how important it is where trees are, right? Like, they don't care that much. So your opponent has to care that they don't care.
Yeah, like, I mean, it changes the nature of trees, it changes the nature of cliffs, and then just also like time changes, because if you can build a bunch of production structures that are safe, and then you build two production structures that are your proxies on two like opposite corners of the map, you basically like a regular faction, if they've got a big bio ball or whatever, or a couple control groups, they still have to physically move across the map and risk getting spotted, or risk running into your army. But a Celestial player, they can be just producing stuff, summoning in units anywhere on the map. It just like, and the timing, to harass a base or something, you don't have to move your whole army across the map. You basically produce an army on the other side of the map already. So like the whole concept of the way you think about time and the passage of time and how long it takes units to move kind of shifts in this kind of strategic sense, even though like individual units are moving at basically the same speed, or comparable speeds to Infernals and Vanguard. That's kind of the impression I got.
Yeah. It's cool. It's a neat idea to be able to do that. Hard to balance, but a neat idea for sure.
Yeah.
When I was playing, I played a bunch of humans, and I played as the Celestials and against the Celestials, and it seemed like the meta at first was take your base over near their base and set it down, build the cannons on it, or have the cannons activated. I can't remember how much building you had to do, not much. And as you're moving across, mine what you can, kill what creep you can, and build production structures on the way. And then just send stuff from your production structures up there. and try to win. And a lot of people were winning in like 4 minutes that way. So, or taking the best resources on the map for some of those double bases they have and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there was some stuff to be worked out. I'm sure they're working on that, but there's pros and cons, of course, to it initially. And if they can get it balanced out to where it feels good, then it's cool that it's unique for sure.
Yeah. And that very much was the meta from what I saw and heard. Is just like basically immediately moving over to the enemy base and trying to harass them with your cores, which are basically the workers. For the Celestials, they basically turn into structures that auto mine, and but when they're flying, when you first produce them, they're flying around and they've got an attack. So you produce a bunch of those, move across the map, use them for attack, drop your command center, and you use a top bar ability to give it a defensive cannon, and you can destroy the opponent's economy. But I'm assuming they're going to come up with a fix for that, because that's just really, really broken. So I'm assuming they're going to come up with a fix for that. So I just don't even think about it really.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll have new stuff here when the early access starts in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Or in a month and a half, I guess.
More or less, yeah, a month and a week maybe. Digressions mana. Do you have any thoughts on the Celestials with like the additional things, like I mentioned about firsthand experience?
I think we really don't need to worry about things like how the gameplay is playing out right now. I'm sure they will work on things. I'm really glad to see asymmetry, of course. I think it's really important that you have things that make factions different, and the way that each game chooses to do that is always neat to see.
Yeah. And then again with Stormgate, I know they put out a roadmap, and some highlights for me was like they're coming out with some tier 3 units, but not all of them. They're only coming out with some tier 3 units. They're coming out with 6 campaign missions, which is interesting. What did you guys think of the roadmap?
I think it's really weird. I think this is a roadmap that says to me that they were not actually ready to release in August.
Yeah, I would agree. That's my initial. That was my knee-jerk reaction too.
I mean, the other tier 3 units aren't until 2025.
Yeah, indeed. It seems like a bit of a distance away. I mean, but with those tier 3 units, I'm wondering if that's I wonder if that's a smart decision actually to like only do tier 1, tier 2 units first to kind of see what kind of strategy, because at lower levels, people often don't get to tier 3. So for Stormgate to just like not even bother and just be like, hey, let's just test out tier 1 and tier 2, the parts of the game that get played the most in PvP, and then we can hammer down, we can like see what kind of like gaps are in the gameplay for each faction, where they're weak, where they're strong. We can see what kind of strategies people develop. We can hammer out the faction identity, and once we get under those things, then we can start filling in the gaps with tier 3 units, while also every release of tier 3 units, that's a potential for like marketing and putting out like a trailer to bring attention to the game again. So from that perspective, I'm wondering, like, it is weird that it's going to take that long to get tier 3, but on the other hand, I was thinking like maybe it's kind of like a secretly smart choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting the idea that maybe they're waiting on purpose to kind of see how things play out and fill in where they feel like it needs to be filled in. I do feel like the other perspective on that is they don't know what to put in for tier 3 units right now, so they're figuring it out. But that's a good, like, very positive spin, and I think they could absolutely do more of their unit reveals. I think one of the smarter things Stormgate has done at very little to no cost to themselves is give a single creator a unit. Like I remember Artosis got the medtech and say, hey, this is like exclusive to you right now. You get the first video for this. Make a introduction to the medtech video. And when other Stormgate videos weren't getting that many views, those were, getting like 40 and 50,000 and stuff. So really brought them up in popularity doing those videos one at a time, and I can definitely see them continuing that trend.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just move on to Battle Aces, unless there's something else you guys want to talk about Stormgate.
I
Yeah.
do want to say there will be some of their co-op mode and heroes and such in the early access release. Uh, but on the point of co-op and co-op commanders specifically, looking back at like StarCraft 2, co-op commanders are expensive. They are a major source of funding for RTS games, and it looks like Stormgate's going to be no different. I don't remember how much they said campaigns cost, but I think in the early access of Stormgate, you should be able to spend about $60 to get co-op commanders and campaign missions right out the gate, which feels bad.
And will
To
that
me,
price tag? I mean, are you basing it off of like how much StarCraft is?
progression can be fully unlocked by purchasing a hero. $10 USD may vary by region.
Oh, right, right. Yeah, well, I mean, I think someone posted a meme in our Discord or some other Discord I'm in about that the Oblivion horse armor back in the day. I still remember that, and I still think about it and talk about it with friends about how it used to be that video games you just released the game and that's it. Maybe you had a patch people could download on their 56K modem, and then Oblivion came out with this horse armor, and everyone made fun of it. And people were like, no one's gonna pay like $5 for horse armor or whatever, $4.99 or $3.99 or whatever it costs. And now that's the kind of that's the main source of revenue for a lot of companies, for a lot of big companies. And a lot of the way modern games are being developed has like really muddied the waters in terms of, yeah, what's a release, what's a full game, what's a partial game, like so many games come out in early access and ask for, funding in early access too, or like, ask for backing in early access. And then so many games sell components, cosmetic components and characters and skins and stuff. It's become really, I do miss the old days where you could just you could just go to the store, buy a box, and it had a disc, and that disc was yours, and it had a game, and you could play it forever as long as you had a machine that could play that disc.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Get
But
Warcraft 3, you have all the Warcraft 3 everything forever back in the day.
yeah, exactly.
Stupid Forged.
Well,
Yeah, then Reforged did crazy stuff, but
Reforged is a whole other topic. But yeah, let's move on to Battle Aces, shall we?
Battle Aces.
So,
Such a good trailer.
yeah, you were talking about. I know before we started recording, you were talking about how good the trailer was.
I mean, it doesn't have any gameplay. They have a different gameplay trailer, but the official reveal trailer is just so pretty.
It's really good animation.
Yeah, it evokes the back and forth. You can kind of get a sense of what's going on in the actual gameplay. I've read up on their lore. What they do have, actually, pretty decent level of lore available for Battle Aces. The whole principle is that there is a big war going on in the solar system, and mankind is still trying to get out to the stars. Anyways, teleportation technology somehow justifies that all combat is done by drones, piloted, like a drone swarm piloted by a single person called a battle ace. So everything is about battles between like 2 battle aces or 4 battle aces, and that's like the player, and
Yeah.
you're controlling your personal drone army. And I think it's a neat internal justification for why things are going on. It feels consistent.
Yeah. And
yeah, for sure.
Go ahead, so.
I was just gonna say, I think the immersion level on their trailer and like it's very like artistic and done in almost like an anime style. It looks really cool, and it doesn't look like the gameplay, which is totally fine, I think. But the whole like you are the battle ace reminds me of when League of Legends came out and they had trailers that had you as the summoner, summoning your hero down to the field, your champion, and I think if they can get that same kind of immersion and vibe, I mean, we all know League of Legends blew up ridiculously,
Yeah.
Like
and
the one of the most successful games ever, hands down. It
yeah, I
makes
mean,
Dota look like a baby, and Dota is a monstrously successful game.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And they made free to play like the model, right? Like free to play was hardly a thing. Definitely not for like games going for this kind of competition and stuff. And then they made it, and everyone's like, "Oh, we should do this." But all that aside, I think immersion in RTS is really tough because, like, who are you, right? In StarCraft One, you're a Cerebrit when you're the Zerg. Like that's about as close as I came to
Mm,
feeling like I know who I am in most RTS
brain in
games.
a jar.
But to say right, exactly, and I was a brain in a jar, and now being like, you're a battle ace, you're in this building, you can, see yourself in there doing stuff. They have the same screen you have in front of you, right? Like, it's cool. So
What if you could see yourself in the building? What if you scroll? What if you zoomed in on that building on the map, and it wasn't like computer graphics? It was just you. It was like a
You have a
Google
webcam.
satellite image of you playing Battle Aces.
that would be terrifying and amazing at the same time.
Um, yeah, no. Getting back to what D Mana was saying. It seems like they're taking the idea of like corporate warfare like to the extreme. So like corporations, they're just that's the vibe I get. They're using drones as proxies for their war, and
Mhm.
me and Deleterious Mana were talking about how on their website they've got like all these units, these like unit bios and stats and stuff, and like different units are like manufactured by different like companies, different corporations, and they've all got their own like visual styles and kind of gameplay styles depending on which corporation built them, which is I think it's an interesting. It's not something I'm interested in, kind of like that corporate dystopic future or like in general like robots. I'm not, I like science fiction. I'm not a big fan of robots in general, so it doesn't appeal too much to me. But it's an interesting idea of being like, well, we don't have factions the way StarCraft or any other RTS has, but what we can have are different to add a character and atmosphere to the units. Different units are built by different manufacturers with their own kind of corporate style or industrial style. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it reminds me of Armored Core. As we all know, Armored Core 6 did very well last
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
Uh, just another case of like Battle Aces is emulating games that have done well. Um, and I mean, it might feel a bit silly, but like Clash Royale, the mobile game, it's a very successful game. I'm sure they made lots and lots of money off of it.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Um, and this is like, what if we made that, but the game was like more real, which is great. I'm a big fan of games that have something to them, and finding a way to bridge the gap between like mobile game uh, to like proper RTS is going to be really cool. Battle Aces matches end in 10 minutes, no matter what. I'm assuming it doesn't like end. It's probably like a tiebreaker thing, and then whatever. Which is
No,
again,
it ends. I think it
wait,
adds a score. I think David Kim said it adds who's in charge of Battle Aces if others don't know, and he was the lead balance designer, and I think he did a lot of other just general design for StarCraft 2 for many years. But anyway, he said it's a mix of your score based on your resources you've mined and units you've killed. So I think
oh
it's kind of
nice.
those two things put together: value of
That's
units
yeah.
you've
pretty
killed,
cool. So your
resources.
kill, you could actually like play for a kill death strategy.
Yeah, you
Um,
could. Especially if you have defensive units and you're like, come at me. I'm ahead
yeah,
right now. I think at 8 minutes the timer shows up. Your first base mine's out at 8 minutes, and I think that's also when you get to see both players' scores, so you know if you're ahead or not and what you have to
I
do.
see. And you got to keep track of your score. You
Yeah,
can
most
play for
games don't
score in
go
the
to
end
eight
game,
minutes.
that kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
pretty cool.
That's
Most
actually
games don't go that long, so it's rare,
yeah.
but that kind of makes it neat.
That is actually really interesting. I think one of the smart things they did was just putting in that time limit. So like you don't, no matter smooths over some issues like with certain strategies or certain units. I'm remembering people talking about back in the what was it what's the one brood unit that everyone hates
The
in
Swarm Host.
Swarm Host? The Swarm
Everyone
Host.
hates the Swarm Host. They
Yeah.
need to get over it.
But I remember people telling stories about how like there would be games like professional games being streamed, you know, in professional competitions where that would last like 45 minutes because of swarm hosts.
Oh, it
And
got way worse than that. There was
oh
like a 2-hour StarCraft 2 game
yeah, and
with like Protoss versus Zerg, and the Zerg just swarm hosted the Protoss for hours on
yeah,
end.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And so you put in a 10-minute time limit, and it takes care of those problems. But it also the type of game they're trying to make is not really. I don't think of it as an RTS. I think of it more of a kind of battle arena kind of game, like Overwatch or something. Um, to me, that's the type of game they're going for. They're just using RTS gameplay and game mechanics to hit that type of genre of game. They have time limits precisely to just end it, so that things end on a high climax rather than dragging on for like too long.
it also means people will just hop in and play a game. You
Exactly.
got 10 minutes between two things happening.
Yeah.
Drop in and play some Battle Aces.
Yeah. You downloading a different game. Hop on. Play some Battle Aces. It's smart. The only other thing I can think of to say about Battle Aces is the map. The maps are diagonally symmetrical, and you always play on the lower left corner. You always start in the lower left corner, and your opponent is also playing in the lower left corner. And then, the game maths out, so they
Same
can,
as Clash Royale,
yeah,
except it's vertical symmetry.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's basically taking the vertical symmetry we see in a lot of games like Hearthstone or whatever, or Clash Royale or whatever.
Hearthstone's a great answer.
But I think it's one of those things. I don't think anyone, if you ask them like, what does an RTS need? Like anything, you can pick anything. I don't think anyone would think, hey, make the map symmetrical so I'm always, no matter which player I am, I'm always starting off in the same spot and I'm always approaching the map the same way. I don't think anyone would say that, but it's kind of like one of those possibly maybe brilliant quality of life decisions, you know?
I really like map asymmetries, personally. I've been playing Dota recently. I like that the Dire and Radiant have like different maps. Those are the two halves of the map. One's like evil colored. It's pretty neat. Um, but the asymmetries are really cool for like infinite depth type things.
Yeah.
There's always something you can improve on when you introduce those little asymmetries. But I don't think Battle Aces is trying to be a pro players game. Battle
Yeah.
Aces does not want you to watch Battle Aces tournaments. I don't think
I
they
don't
want
think
you
so
to
either.
play their game,
Yeah.
which is cool. Very
Yeah.
respectable to me.
I think they know that if the game gets popular enough, people like a pro scene will emerge of sorts. But yeah, it's not quite as spectator sport in
Yeah.
design as StarCraft 2.
I don't think, are there any Clash of Clans pro tournaments?
Clash Royale.
Are
Clash
there?
of Clans is a considerably less respectable game. It's very pay to
Okay, pay to win.
improve. Whereas Clash Royale is like it's a lot closer to like a Magic the Gathering, but with more like real time unit stuff going on.
Gotcha. All right. Well, do you guys have anything else you want to say about Battle Aces, or should we move on to the big man ZeroSpace?
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
No, you're good.
I think Battle Aces, their website is also beautiful. Like they really came out the gate
Oh, yeah.
strong with like high quality imagery, high quality content, that kind of a thing. Their units are adorable and their unit names make sense. So they're clearly doing everything they can to like lower the skill floor. They have a combined command card, which ZeroSpace also has a really nice combined command card. And even though we're not really talking about it, Immortal did a pretty good job with that too. Stormgate has a ways to go with bringing things to that level of simplicity. But they did that nicely. They have really brought the game, like RTS genre, to more of an entry level, and it's an interesting experiment. Their Discord isn't as packed as their competitors' Discords yet, but it's still growing, so we'll see. and their beta starts on Tuesday. Their first closed beta, so they're doing like social media challenges and stuff for keys. We'll see if we get in and who all gets in and stuff. They're also doing random invites based on who signs up. So we'll see how their beta goes. My only concern with their game, and it's not necessarily even bad for their game, is that it may not have the depth of these other games, right? Like,
Yeah.
they don't have as many modes, of course. There's only the one map. They have not committed to making more maps. They're doing everything to make it simple at an entry level. I think the high level of it is going to be lower. The ceiling is going to be lower as they've lowered the floor so much too. So, the best pro players, we've already seen 2 of them play. The stuff they did was cool, but it wasn't like I could never do that in a million years cool. It was just like, okay, they blinked successfully, So the more there is to a game, the higher the skill ceiling is, the more players can get into it, the more depth it can have. And I feel like Battle Aces is really fun and good and 10 minutes and quick. It looks like all that stuff is true. And at the same time, there still might be a point where you go, well, I played Battle Aces for a couple hours and I feel like I did as well as I can do today. I'm going to go, load up ZeroSpace or Stormgate or StarCraft 2 or whatever for more depth in my game.
That's probably what they want, honestly.
Yeah, it might be fine for them.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to ZeroSpace.
ZeroSpace.
So the trailer, there was a new trailer released, and it was called, the title of the trailer was First Campaign Trailer or something like that.
Bad title.
Yeah, First Campaign Mission Trailer. But honestly, the big thing in the trailer was the Galactic Conquest mode. It was mentioned. It was talked about in the Kickstarter right in the beginning, but it was kind of absent in the previous tests, and now they're kind of making the big announcement that, hey, we're working on this, and I suspect they're prioritizing it due to the success of Helldivers and how this Galactic Conquest mode is kind of similar to that in some ways. So yeah, I don't know. Let's just chat about the Galactic Conquest mode for starters.
I'm very excited for Galactic Conquest mode. I really like PlanetSide 2. I really like incomprehensibly large maps that you can still have an impact on. Do I have any other thoughts? Maguro, obviously lead co-op designer for ZeroSpace, also notable legend in the StarCraft 2 co-op modding community especially. So I have a feeling the Galactic Conquest is going to be able to do some very interesting things, and will have learned a lot of lessons from the most successful co-op RTS game mode. The StarCraft 2 one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm wondering. I do wonder, how's it going to work? In terms of the actual missions, because I think they said they're single player and co-op missions. PvE, I think, is what they, or at least what's implied, is that it's going to be PvE, which I think is how Helldivers does it.
Yep.
So yeah, I just wonder, because we've had the survival mode, which is a type of cooperative mode where you just survive waves after waves of enemies. And then we've had the PvP, and then we've had the campaign story prologue, which we can't talk about because it's not really under NDA, but I think they just said, please don't talk about it. Which, for me, is better than an NDA. I'll respect that more than an NDA.
I don't like NDAs.
Yeah. I get that they're necessary, but if a developer just says, hey, this is important to us, please don't talk about it because we don't want people to get the wrong impression, I have a high respect for that. But yeah, so we've had these kind of different, basically what I'm getting at is we've had single player campaign mode, we've had PvP, we've had survival mode, which is a type of, wave survival co-op mode. I'm wondering what type of co-op mode could they have for the Galactic Conquest mode, because how would it work? I don't think they're going to repeat the survival mode structure because there's already a separate survival mode. So I'm just and I know, Soap, you might know the answer to this, and you probably cannot talk about it if you do. But yeah, for you, Deleterious,
I think every mission will probably be different.
You think so?
Well, it's like StarCraft 2, the co-op missions are campaign missions that you play with 2 people, modified slightly. Pretty across the board. They're just like direct ports of missions that already exist. I have a feeling ZeroSpace isn't going to do that because I think that's a low effort thing that isn't like the team's vibe.
Also, they don't have all the campaign missions the way StarCraft did when it introduced co-op mode.
That's true. Co-op came after.
Yeah,
so.
but like it seems like the majority of the maps, or perhaps all of the maps of Galactic Conquest mode, are going to be just made from scratch. Like they can't be campaign modes or campaign maps modified. They have to be their own original thing. And so, like, I'm just wondering, like, is it going to be like? I mean, imagine it's got to have a lot of waves in some way, but is it going to have like objectives, like go take over this tower, destroy this facility, destroy the enemy base? But it's just like the enemies are going to be harder.
I think it'll be like one of the places where the trigger system probably gets pushed a bit. You have like, if you want to have a good co-op game mode that is not just playing PvE with another person around and like a weird faction, you have to like make the missions really good. I guess I haven't played. I'm not familiar with like Stormgate's co-op mode. I don't really know what they've done with that. If anyone knows what they've done with that.
Yeah, they have 2. Stormgate has 2 kind of co-op modes. I've only played one, and it's you basically you have 3 players, and you can expand out on the map, and then there's enemy bases, and then like a main enemy base, and then periodically there's these caravans that are guarded by enemy units that try to get to the main enemy base, and if any of these caravans get to the main enemy base, it's like they deliver a bunch of rockets or whatever, and that main base will fire a bunch of rockets or shots, or I forget what it is, but it fires it all across the map and can hit any of your buildings anywhere. And so for that one, the general kind of like arc is you expand, destroy the sub bases, the secondary bases, and then eventually everyone just makes a big push for the main base. And in between all that, you're trying to stop these caravans from getting across the map.
It seems cool.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit too much like a Warcraft 3 mod to me. It's the kind of thing that like people have been doing forever.
Yeah.
Like if we look back at like the difference between StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, one of the big things that improved that really let people get more interesting map design and stuff was the improvement in the trigger system.
Yeah.
So like in StarCraft 2, you can make things happen that are like really neat. You can have events and things that impact one another all over the place, and that allows you to make a map where the goal is not like kill the other guy, or don't die. Those are two like fundamental types of RTS missions: kill the other guy and don't die. You see them a lot in older games.
Yeah.
Giant Grant Games famously talks about Warcraft 3, how one of the things it really excelled at was being a game where you did things besides kill the other guy and don't die.
For sure. Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think all of this to say I have high hopes and high expectations for the kinds of maps we're going to get out of the ZeroSpace co-op. And I have a feeling it will be more than kill the other guy and also hit these caravans while you're at it.
Possibly. I didn't play the other Stormgate co-op mode, but I think it's like there's portals around the map and you have to go destroy them or something.
Kill the other guy. Yep.
Yeah. Sure, but I mean, ultimately...
No, it's a better kill the other guy, but like,
yeah.
That's also just a StarCraft 2 co-op map.
Sure. But you know,
ones, I think.
Maybe that is kind of the general direction that the Galactic Conquest mode in ZeroSpace, the type of maps they'll have is, maybe that's precisely the type of thing. It's difficult when you have a game where the primary method of interacting with the world is destroying it. It's hard.
You kill the other guy. So how do you make the thing happen that isn't kill the other guy?
Right, and the other thing you have is gather resources and build buildings, which I remember in kind of like both StarCraft 2 and even back in Brood War and in Warcraft 3 too, there were maps where it was like just gather a bunch of resources or build a bunch of stuff in this specific spot.
The Reaper mission in Wings of Liberty.
Yeah.
You have the mineral mission in Brood War or regular StarCraft 1, and in Warcraft 3 you have the 10,000 lumber mission.
Yeah.
The 10,000 lumber mission is definitely the best of those three. Like looking back, I think it does a really good job fitting into the story. It's like you've got these guys, they need resources to do a thing, so to get the resources they incidentally piss off the night elves, and now they have to go fight like the night elf god and try to get away with the lumber before that happens.
Yeah.
It's all very interesting and very interconnected, and I do have to wonder how much of that is possible in a co-op mode. I think it was mentioned somewhere that like you can unlock abilities, new units, abilities, and technology. So like,
oh yeah, they sent.
I guess if you're meant to be competing between like different, we were fighting like proxy wars, I guess. Right, you fight the PvE guys to like take control from the other players.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe there's a technology you get by leveling up your faction where you get to like spawn caravans if somebody's like attacking into one of your tiles, and these caravans like wander between bases, and if they get there, they like blow something up, right?
Yeah, or they summon some sort of super unit or something.
Yeah, you can integrate this kill the other guy and don't die into the like meta progression system, and then it's more interesting because it's like I've put all of my resources into making it so you can't kill the other guy anymore, which is I don't know, a proxy.
Yeah, so what you're describing is like if you take over a territory, your team could vote on like a modifier to add to the map so that when
maybe a mutator, you could say.
Yeah, mutator. And then when the opposing team tries to take that territory back from you, they have to deal with that mutator, right?
Yeah. And then you have like
maybe
dynamics.
Yeah, it would be interesting if they did that. What are those maps going to be like? Are there going to be any just like, hey, gather all these resources while surviving waves kind of levels? Is there going to be one where it's just like, hey, build such and such structures, in this area that's impossible to defend easily? And then, will there be multiple tiers of like mechanics or objectives and stuff? Very interesting. I wish they had said more about that, about what individual levels are like in that trailer. They kind of just...
I'm sure there will be more news someday. After all, that trailer was not the Galactic Conquest trailer. That was the campaign trailer.
That was a campaign trailer that it did not talk a lot about the campaign. It talked a lot more about the other modes.
It didn't talk about Galactic Conquest at all, did it? It just had pictures?
It had pictures, but I mean, he talked about it. So like a character. So I guess a character is talking, and it sounds like he's talking about the narrative of Galactic Mode. Where
he's talking about the narrative of defending humanity.
Is he? Because he was talking about like we've got to defend our borders. We have to form like unlikely allies, and then that's being said as
Mass Effect. That's like the whole thing, right? You got to go.
Well, I don't know about the defending borders bit. That's not really like Mass Effect, but like it is.
I haven't played Mass Effect.
Okay. Yeah.
Not a real gamer. I'm sorry.
It's.
I do think the galaxy map we see there may be a campaign thing as well.
Oh, really?
Because you could use the same system for both, right?
Yeah, and in like Wings of Liberty, which I think is that and Mass Effect are probably the closest to the ZeroSpace campaign we've ever seen. They have planets you're choosing to go to, you just don't really see the whole galaxy.
Yeah.
And here I think you may have more of like a... Yeah, you may have like a sprawling galaxy here, and you can choose the planet because of, like you said, if it's the functionality is already in co-op, why not put it in the game?
And hopefully you can make it so different things on different missions impact one another. Like if you do the missions in this order, you have like better supply lines, more resources. Who knows?
Yeah, that could be. I mean, Wings did similar stuff, right? Like if you do certain missions on Brutal without getting like a siege tank first, for instance, it's way harder.
Yeah.
You get the siege tank and then go do that mission, then it's like, okay, now I have tanks.
I would hope for more than unit unlock order in like an ideal world, because I don't know, I played Wings of Liberty. It's the only StarCraft 2 I've played. I think it is a fine campaign. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like a lot of things about it. However, I do think that was 15 years ago now.
Yeah, it's
Just
old,
about,
right?
14 and a half years ago, I guess. But
It's nearly as old as League.
so hopefully, yeah, I mean, hopefully all of the upcoming campaigns, and especially ZeroSpace, can do new and more interesting stuff. Have your decisions matter more, right? Like the decisions in the Wings of Liberty campaign are cool for like changing a little dialogue, maybe changing a level or a character that talks to you later, but like
You can change how a character dies, but they die either way.
right, like stuff like that. So hopefully, hopefully there's more.
Honestly, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was gonna say, I do hope that there's, the RTSs that are coming out with campaigns. I hope they don't focus too much on kind of very gimmicky and highly scripted maps. I hope they have a good balance of just like maps where you just get to play the RTS, right? Just get to play the game you want, and it just has an interesting level design, and maybe the location of enemy bases is interesting and gives you interesting decisions. That's kind of what I liked about the original StarCraft. Was there's some little bit of scripting, there was some like no build missions, but like mostly every level was just like, hey, here's an interestingly designed level, here's an interesting starting position, interesting expansion, like different ways of arranging the enemy bases, and then you're just allowed to play the game. Whereas in Wings of Liberty, when I played it, I found it very annoying because like every mission was some sort of gimmick mission. There's some sort of like, oh, you got to defend against these hordes of zombies at night. Oh, this level has a lava that's rising and falling, but you can't control when, so you got to just like time it, I guess. And it just felt like some of them in isolation are fun, but like all together in one campaign where every level is like some kind of gimmick, it was just getting very frustrating because I'm like, I just want to play StarCraft. I just want to play the game that I came to play, and instead I'm playing like StarCraft with like weird bells and whistles that I don't care about and I'm not interested in. It's almost like they were afraid the core gameplay wasn't good enough to stand on its own and keep people interested. So they had to add all this extra stuff, these extra gimmicks and scripted events. Here's a train that's coming. Go attack the train to get its resources or whatever.
Okay, I actually have pretty particular thoughts about the Wings of Liberty macro design specifically. Because Wings of Liberty is meant to be a campaign where you are a scrappy rebel fighting against like massively powerful enemy, so there's not a lot of like open macro missions where you just like take 3 bases and make money, and I hate that. I really want to make money in my RTS. It's like the S is mostly about money. You don't get many bases in Wings of Liberty. There's only a couple missions where you get multiple bases. There's a lot of missions where there's one obvious correct answer and nothing else works. Looking at you, Maw of the Void. It's a battlecruiser mission where if you don't build battlecruisers, you are throwing the game. It's a recurring problem with RTS missions. When you introduce a new cool unit and then the cool unit is the only answer to the problem, and it's not a very interesting answer, not a good time. All of that aside, Giant Grant Games campaign advisor, consultant type guy.
Yep. For ZeroSpace, yeah.
For ZeroSpace, has very famously said that the things he tends to like the most are especially for his challenge runs, but he's a big fan of the macro missions where you have a problem and must solve it, and you have a lot of tools available, and your enemy also has a lot of tools available. And I think that is a very cool genre of mission.
Yeah.
But you just don't get very many of them, really.
Well, not nowadays.
I mean, look at Warcraft 3. You only get like 6 units in like most of the things. Warcraft 3 is a weird game because it's got a lot of factions and it's an older game, so there's really not that many units in it. And a lot of the units are just like guy with sword.
Admittedly, the guy with sword does look very cool with his sword.
Not in the original Warcraft 3. Can't see anything.
I personally love the art style and the unit design in the original Warcraft 3.
I'm a big fan of remasters of old games. Like StarCraft 1 looks terrible. That game is unwatchable. But
no way, man. I love that gritty pixel art style. No irony. So genuinely love it.
It looks so cool.
I like it too, but I like the remaster as well.
Okay, let's not forget. StarCraft 1's older than me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have nostalgia bias, and I suspect nobody does too here. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man,
I remember when StarCraft was like in beta, and my friend played it, and like my jaw was on the floor the whole time. I was like, a Reaver
that game's
makes
crazy.
units that kill stuff. That's a unit that blows up and kills stuff, and the Reaver is slow, but you pick it up with a shuttle and it's fast.
Yeah.
And there's a carrier.
Yeah.
What the heck?
That was so crazy.
Like,
that was so nuts. Oh, and then the Overlords are the Zerg's farm. That was mind blowing at the time. It was just crazy.
Everything about the Zerg was mind blowing at the time. It was like, what is this?
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. I mean, it was otherworldly, especially the Protoss and Zerg. The Terran was a little more familiar, but still, that was cool too. It was. Yeah. So I guess I have those memories and nostalgia to be super biased about this.
I really like Warcraft 1 though. Haven't played it.
Yeah, it's
can't get it to launch on my computer.
Oh no. I do want to mention a couple of things. First, as you said, I can't say a lot because I am consulting on ZeroSpace, so take everything I say about the other games with a grain of salt, I guess. But I try to be unbiased.
Everything I say with more of a grain of salt, probably.
You
can trust soap.
But I can't say a whole lot about it. But I do think it is, worth mentioning that the ZeroSpace team is working on a fraction of the budget of the other two games, and I have a lot of respect for the people, including and especially Marv, who started the whole thing and is largely funding it himself and not taking a salary himself and all that. Like, there's a lot of passion on the team for the stuff, so like there's a lot of excitement and a lot of working weird hours, and the team around the world putting a lot of ideas and thoughts together to do something like the Galactic Conquest mode and the campaign hopefully are going to be things nobody's ever done before. So if that can come together, it's awesome. And I really hope it can.
I don't know if Stormgate or Battle Aces has the larger budget, to be honest.
I'm going to guess Battle Aces. Like if they have Tencent as an investor or a publisher or whatever the actual relationship is, I'm willing to bet they have the most money out of whatever. And again, I don't really think of it as an RTS game. To me, it's more of a battle arena game. But of all the games with RTS gameplay, I'm willing to bet that they have the best funding by far.
Yeah, I think they probably have the access to, like, if they made the argument, Tencent could fund them a lot more, right? Like,
so I don't think they've used as much money though.
They may not have. It's hard to say.
But I'm sure if they can make a good case, they could get infinite money.
Yeah, I think so.
And honestly, I think they can make the case. That game looks good.
Yeah, they have a really high level of polish. Like, Stormgate's got some decently polished stuff. ZeroSpace, a little scrappier, a little less polish on the website for sure. And Battle Aces came out the gate and was like, hey, look, we're gonna outdo both of these in terms of, you can see every individual unit and what might be the best website unit display ever, which is really important for how the game works.
It is an incredible website. It's so nice. They got the lore really blurbs and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like, hey, we're in the 21st century now. Like, StarCraft 2's website is not the gold standard anymore. So that's really impressive. They did good work there. It shows they have money too. It's like, oh, you paid a lot for this.
Getting back to ZeroSpace though. Because we did go on a fun tangent of nostalgia and other RTS stuff, but Soap, I think I was going to bring up the new faction colors, but also I think you wanted to say something else about ZeroSpace.
Oh gosh, did I? I was going to mention that Battle Aces, they're calling themselves a fast action RTS, which is the acronym is a FARTS, which is really funny. So their Discord's going crazy with that. I do feel like ZeroSpace, if we're calling Battle Aces a fast action RTS, I feel like ZeroSpace is kind of an action RTS because it's not as fast, but all the like quality of life stuff, most of the quality of life stuff that Battle Aces has. Right, exactly. And Stormgate is more of a traditional RTS where you definitely need to be looking at your base for a fair amount of the time, and it's not a combined command card really.
Combined command cards are so good in any game that doesn't have them as actually like throwing their lives away. I don't understand why you would ever make people tab through units when the unified command card can't exist. It's like having a 12-unit control group maximum. It's a relic of a bygone era. And if you do it on purpose, because it's a relic of a bygone era and you want to evoke something through that, I think that's excellent. If an RTS came out today and they said you can only put 12 units into a control group, or maybe a supply limit would be more interesting, honestly. Like 20 supply to a control group, that would be really neat.
And they and if they like designed the gameplay and the strategy and the maps around that concept of you can only
it'd be really cool because you're doing something on purpose. But it feels like Stormgate is doing it because it's what is done.
Or what people are used to.
Yeah, which is never a good enough justification in my mind.
No,
also, I don't want to tab through units. Don't make me do that. I'll never cast the spell on whatever the second unit is.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
It's a great way to.
Yeah, it's Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's just a great way to remind me that I'm not that good. I'm like, I had to tab 4 times to cast a spell and the moment passed. Oh, I suck. Like, so it's really nice to not have that.
It sort of does take preparation. Like, you have to go into a battle knowing, like, you kind of have to know how many times you're going to tab beforehand, and you've got to have to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe pro players have a different, way of doing it. But when I approach a battle where I have to tab between units in order to cast spells, like that's kind of how I have to do it. I have to go into that battle already having a plan of like, okay, I'm going to cast this, hit tab twice, cast this, hit tab 3 times to get to the previous whatever. Because I think you can. There's a hotkey where you can go backwards, where you can tab backwards, but I don't remember what it is. If it's like Control tab or Alt tab. But anyway, I
reselected the control group.
Yeah, or that too. I just basically tab. I cycle the tab until I get
that makes sense, yeah.
But yeah, it is very frustrating. I can see an argument being made about how this, because of the way it makes you think about what you're doing, rather than just automatically reacting, that it takes more skill and more strategizing. Whereas if you've got command cards, right, where you've got all your spells on one thing, then it's less strategic, less thoughtful, and it's more about reaction time. I could see an argument about that being made. It's not an argument I feel like making myself, because I don't care that much about it, but I could see someone making an argument, making the case.
I think it's not more strategic. I think it obviously does have a higher skill ceiling. There's more buttons to press, but I don't really want buttons to press. Who wants those? Like, imagine if you're playing a MOBA and to press your Q and your W, you gotta press tab to get between the two.
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy, I'm gonna go cast my ultimate, press tab 4 times.
Yeah.
Yay. There's other things to be doing, because the point of the game is that you're, like, playing the game. It's why you cut things like workers. It's why you let things queue, or, like, queue orders, right? It's so that you don't have to stop playing the game, and you can, Yeah. I know for some people the game is the tabbing, and it is like checking every 12 seconds to go and send a worker, or, every 12 seconds doing your run through, box selecting all of your larvae, moving them to the right spot, sending your new drones to go mine because rallying hasn't been put into the game yet because it's 2002. But at that point, just go play Brood War. It's better.
Right. It's hard to beat Brood War with the old.
If you're gonna be old, be Brood War. Yeah.
I think there is sort of like a existential question about RTS and the future of RTS in terms of, is the fun in the game, in the difficulty of the game, and the really high skill ceiling mechanically, can I remember to build my workers every 12 seconds? Can I queue up exactly the right amount of stuff? Or is it in the, my workers and base are going to largely take care of themselves once I decide to expand, and my stuff can, maybe drag line formation, which I really love, And is it going to be my decisions that really impact it? Which MOBA is almost entirely decisions, right? Like you have mechanical skill, but most of your choices about where to be, where to position yourself, what to buy, things like that is choice based. And I feel like that kind of breakdown to me is kind of the right answer. And I think Battle Aces and ZeroSpace and some other upcoming RTSs are kind of going more of that route. And Stormgate is saying, you know, hey, we're building workers, we're not queuing things up, we're just making sure you're looking at your base and all that. And it's an interesting experiment, right? Stormgate's doing really well in terms of follows and Discord participation, so maybe they're right, but it's hard to believe RTS is gonna interest another generation with that mentality for me.
Yep, there's a reason why they like MOBAs have changed a lot, because there's like 2 MOBAs that have been successful ever, which I think is really funny, personally. Like two MOBAs, the extremely successful genre, 2.
Yeah, that's wild.
They've changed a lot over the years, right? A lot of that like tiny stuff has gone away in favor of the game just being decisions infinitely. Like the exhaustion after a game of Dota is scary, because you're just thinking all the time. You're constantly pressing. You got to be doing things, and it's very cool. And very satisfying, and I think learning lessons from MOBAs is a really good idea, because MOBAs are the child of RTS, and they are way more successful in terms of broad appeal. Pokemon Unite, pretty good. Hot take.
Yeah, that's cool. I've heard a bit about it. Faction colors? Did we talk about faction colors already?
Yeah.
Faction colors,
Well,
they look really nice.
Yeah, they look nice. I will also say, I said this should only take. I'm like, oh, this is only going to take about 30 minutes to record, and it
takes
been
a long time to talk.
Yeah, it's been a little over an hour. But yeah, I figure we can talk about the new faction colors in ZeroSpace and then maybe wrap it up.
Yeah,
They're so pretty.
They look nice. They really pop out.
yeah, the game desperately needs it, especially for observers, because it's hard. It's like you can have different like health bar colors, but sometimes the units look exactly the same otherwise. So this will be really nice if it comes through the way that it does in the previews and in what I've seen of it. So hopefully it does, and it's consistently. You can pick your color here pretty soon, you know, because right now you pick one color and you show up in game different. It's like hashtag alpha problems, but it'll be really nice to move past that. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
Colors, very cool.
Yeah, very nice. All right. Unless there's anything left you guys want to say, I think we can wrap it up here.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you guys for coming, and maybe we will see you next time.